whether you have a pharma product or a medtech product, these are the key early decisions you need to be making. So I'll start off with, where are you going to focus? Where's the unmet need? What's your target market unmet need? That making that decision, that choice, is really important very early on, because that guides everything else. After that, I would say vision, and the vision there is what does success look like, but not from an internal perspective, but from an external perspective. So what does success look like for your customers, for your patients? So from that external, I think that's really important. And when you describe your vision, I think the other thing that's interesting and an area for improvement is making sure that that vision is what I would call competitive. In other words, you feel better placed to realize that vision than anybody else, if that makes sense. So you don't have something that's very generic, but something that really lends itself to your strength. So that would be next. After that, things like positioning and value proposition, really important. Those choices are made very early on, because they're going to influence your data strategy. They're going to influence which patients you study your drug in, etc., etc. So that's quite fundamental. The other decision we have to make is where we're going to focus for growth. So, for example, there might be an area where you've got to change practice. So let's imagine it was just I'm thinking medtech, an irrigant solution, something you use when you do procedures. If people are using a lot of homebrew and you're trying to switch them away from homebrew to premix, or think about the good old drips, so there are lots of things where you might have to change behavior before you actually get them to adopt your particular product. In pharma, you might need to increase diagnosis. There are lots of disease states where people sort of circle around the system for many years. So that's something we have to understand to decide where the areas we have to focus for growth and how we're going to create value wherever those areas are. The other thing early on, and I'm mentioning this because a lot of these things aren't decided early on. So there's the tension. But the other thing I would suggest is life cycle management. How you're thinking about evolving what you're bringing to the marketplace. Because sometimes for those medical devices that actually are classified as 3, they might need to do studies in a different device if it's going to, so that it has implications. So you need to think, as you're mapping out your clinical trial program, you need to think about when you're going to introduce different doses, different devices, indications. When are we which one should we study first? So there are a lot of considerations like that need to be made. And then I'm going to say, last but not least, pricing. And because pricing is all about getting that balance right. But even when we think about patient, access to whatever it is you are bringing to the marketplace, you've got to think about where that patient's presenting. Is it a hospital? Is it out in the community? Is it in a specialist hospital or just a general hospital? Who is that patient? Are they insured, underinsured, uninsured? All these factors are going to influence some of the decisions you make. So I think that's really critical.